Well, I can speak now to the Reform UK Deputy Leader, Richard Tice. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Everybody's talking about you. Let's start with the leader of the Church of England, who says that your policy on asylum is isolationist, short-term and knee-jerk. What part of that is wrong?
All of it's wrong because our policy on asylum seekers and removing those who are here illegally is to look after the people that the British government is supposed to look after, which is the British people, and to make them more prosperous, to improve the quality of public services for British citizens. And you've now got a government that's basically admitted the opposite is true. They're more interested in protecting the rights of people who've come here illegally, therefore they are criminals, than looking after the rights of British citizens. That's the dividing line, and that's why the latest poll shows that at 35%, we're 15 points ahead of a disappearing Labour Party.
Well, let's not argue about individual polls. There's no question that you guys are ahead, but is there a problem, though, for you that this is a clear statement of policy, but credible governments make agreements with other parties internationally? What you're basically saying is, in the end, what matters is what we want for our people, and deals that we might have made over periods of time with the United Nations, with other countries in Europe, with others, they can all go by the wayside because we need to get re-elected.
So are you suggesting that a 70-year-old, out-of-date, unfit-for-purpose agreement is more important than actually looking after the interests of the British citizens today? Let me tell you, that is such an out-of-touch
I'm suggesting that when you make a promise...
And that is why we're leading the polls and why the Westminster class is so out of touch with how furious people are.
I'm suggesting that when you make a promise to a partner, whether it be another individual or another country, you need to keep it. Or if
for as long as it works for a government and our citizens.
Or if you want to change it, you have to get that...
You give due notice.
You need to do that with agreement
notice.
rather than unilaterally.
You give due notice. So if it's 6 months' notice, we give 6 months' notice. It's just the same as in a business contract. When you're renting a property, you come to the end of the lease...
You're never going to do business with people who suddenly turn up and say, by the way, we've changed our minds.
No.
You are never going to do that.
What you do is you do business on the basis of the laws and the notice period for an international agreement. Most international treaties have an exit clause, a termination clause. Frankly, if they don't, then that's negligent in itself. Let's go back to the key point. This government seems to have forgotten that it is elected to look after the interests of the British people and to make us more prosperous. And if it abandons that duty, frankly, they should give up and call a general election.
Are you saying to the Archbishop, essentially, keep your nose out of politics?
Look, I'm a Christian. I enjoy the church. I believe in God. But no, the role of the Archbishop is not actually to interfere with international migration policies that is determined by the government.
But it is his job to tell us what he thinks and what the Church thinks is morally right.
Correct. That's very different from international migration policy.
And don't governments have some responsibility to demonstrate moral behaviour, or is it just a business transaction being in government?
It's a bit of both, but fundamentally...
No, you can't have it both ways.
It's not an either-or, but fundamentally, I repeat, the role of the government is to make people better off, to improve our public services, to improve access to housing, and by removing hundreds of thousands of people who are here illegally, will ease the pressure on the housing market, will ease the pressure on the labour market, and that'll lead to higher wages, because currently, with give or take 1 million people illegally potentially working in the UK, that is suppressing British wages with a huge black market.
All right. Can I just ask you to talk about one thing clearly? You want your councillors to object to the presence of asylum hotels in their areas, and you said pursue legal means. Can you be clear with us that there is no encouragement from your party to the sort of person who want to break into asylum hotels in masks and to intimidate asylum seekers?
Of course. What a ridiculous suggestion, Trevor.
It's not a ridiculous suggestion.
It is a ridiculous suggestion.
Well,
we have consistently said... Frankly, Trevor, that is outrageous.
Let me finish. Whether it's ridiculous or not, I want to give you the opportunity to say it's ridiculous. That's the point of this interview.
Which is exactly what I'm saying. It's an outrageous suggestion. Of course we're not suggesting that. We've always suggested lawful, peaceful protest, nothing else.
All right, let's talk about your broader plans on this area. You want to stop illegal immigrants landing in the first place. You've talked about deploying the Royal Navy. What would sailors' orders be? Would it be that they should sink small boats if they didn't turn back?
I think you might be suffering a little bit of August sunstroke, Trevor. Of course we're not saying sink boats. Get a grip. What's the
point of putting the Royal Navy out there?
The point of putting the Royal Navy out there is to act as a deterrent alongside our deportation policy, which will deter people from coming. Because everybody will know, if they land on these shores, they will be detained, they will be rapidly processed, and they will be deported.
This is very interesting. Most deterrents work because the deterrer is going to do what he or she says they're going to do.
And so if
you put the Royal Navy out there, what are they? Are they just interested observers?
Yes.
What, hanging about?
In a sense, that's what the
Why
border
are you
force
wasting the Navy's time?
That's what the border force are currently there for. But they're acting as a taxi service.
Well, why are you wasting the Navy's time just out there having a look?
Assuming we're right, and we think we are, that our policy of deportations and detaining and deporting works, within weeks, the incentive to come here will finish.
So it doesn't matter whether it's Royal Navy out there or not.
Therefore, we enjoy the success that Australia had some 12 years ago when they had a pushback policy, and guess what?
But you're not answering my question. What is the point of putting the Royal Navy in the Channel if they are not going to take aggressive actions against the small boats?
It's all part
or any action.
It's all part of a deterrent. And do you know what you do? Just like in business, you make a decision, you try something. If it works, you keep pursuing it. If it's not working, you tweak, you adapt, you adjust. That's how you work in business, and that's how governments should run. And you try a variety of measures. We've put forward very clear plans. That's why we're leading in the polls, because people clearly understand if you're here illegally, you're going to be detained and deported. If you come here illegally on small boats, you're going to be detained and you're going to be deported.
You're going to put people in disused military facilities and then deport them to a third country. Are there any countries with whom you wouldn't do a deal? Afghanistan? Sudan?
We will look to do return deals with a variety of countries. And do you know what? Sometimes in business, you do business with people you don't like. If we want a ceasefire in Gaza, you've got to do a deal with the vile terrorist Hamas. If we want a ceasefire in Ukraine, you've got to do a deal with the vile monster Putin, OK? And if we want to return people to places like Afghanistan, you may have to do a deal with the Taliban. Sometimes things are difficult. Sometimes you deal with people you may not be best buddies with and go to the pub with.
With respect, you said 4 times that in business you do this or you do that. Well, you know, I'm also in business, but the truth is that there are things you cannot do if you are an elected government that you would do in business. So, just to be clear, there's no barrier from your point of view doing deals with countries. Their human rights records, the likelihood of people being tortured and so on, it makes no difference. You would not, for example, you would probably then have to resign from the Refugee Convention, would you?
We've already said, Nigel was very clear last Tuesday, that we will essentially derogate from whatever international treaties are necessary in order to make this policy effective. Because once again, let me be 100% clear for everybody. We have to look after the interests of the British citizens. We're not responsible for every monstrous, despotic regime all over the world. We're responsible for British citizens.
Our conduct, aren't we?
We're responsible for British citizens and to make us more prosperous. And I'll tell you why I use the word business,
for who we decide are our friends and our relations.
If we keep spending more than we're earning, right, we're going to go bust as a country in the same way that businesses go bust. Right. That's why the 30-year gilt yield is rising to completely unsustainable levels.
OK. Elon Musk says that the British government has declared war on the British people. Over the top or fair comment?
Mr. Musk enjoys free speech, and sometimes he might be over the top, sometimes it might be fair comment. In a sense, what he says is not relevant to me or us. We're focused on what's right for the British people.
All right. Can I ask you about something else that the Archbishop has talked about, and that's the 2-child cap on benefits. I think you would scrap it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we want a child benefit system that encourages more British families, more British births, because we've got a demographic problem at the moment. But equally, we need a welfare system that gets people back into work and stops people making the lifestyle choice of essentially deciding not to work.
So you scrap it. You scrap it. Can I just ask you if you would agree with Gordon Brown's way of paying for getting rid of it, which is essentially a sin tax, gambling tax?
We agree with Gordon Brown on probably zero, although he does agree with me, for example, on not paying voluntary interest on the Bank of England's printed reserves. But look, we'll decide how to pay for it in our way. That's the reality.
Oh, so you're not ruling out a gambling tax?
We're not setting a policy for a budget in 4 years' time after the next general election that we win. On your show, however brilliant
You've already done that on child benefits, Kat. You said a policy. So why not on this?
Because you're asking a very specific to link something directly.
OK. You complain when we don't take you seriously, and now you're complaining when I'm asking you what you do as government. Anyway.
Wonderful to see you.
Richard Tice, thank you for your time this morning.